And joining me now to speak more on this, we have a defense and security strategist. He was also a former U.S. Army captain. He's now retired, Bish Johnson. Good to have you join us.
Thank you for having me.
So I really want to look at the military angle because of experience. I want to look at the military angle with you. So let's start with the fact that at the beginning of this war, there was some level of expectation, or not expectation, but worry and concern that the Russian army would overrun Ukraine. But that doesn't seem to have happened, at least not in a hurry. What do you think is responsible for this?
Okay. Look, when it comes to military situations like this, it's easier to conquer a place, but it's much more difficult to actually occupy that place. And I can tell you based on the experience of the U.S. in Iraq. Iraq was overrun within 72 hours, but you saw what ensued afterwards. The Iraqis mounted an insurmountable insurgency that escalated the situation and led the U.S. to stay the number of years that it was in Iraq. Now, on this Russian situation, they were surprised to have made the kind of resistance that the Ukrainians are putting off, because the Ukrainian Western allies assessed that in a face-to-face combat with Russia, the Ukrainians may not be able to withstand their force. So what they did was arm them with all these anti-tank, anti-armor, anti-aircraft Stinger missiles and Javelin missiles that have been very, very effective in destroying all kinds of Russian armored vehicles, including aircraft. And so with that, and because of the lack of coordination, the Russian military is more like a centralized military. It's not like that of the U.S., where you have decentralized kind of forces, where what we call the non-commissioned officers, they have the leverage to make on-the-spot decisions based on the situation on the ground. The Russians, we have to wait for others to come from the top. Because of other bureaucracy of others coming from the top, you see them stored in most places, and they are still using old system of logistics to move, to resupply the troops in terms of food, fuel, ammunitions, and stuff like that. So a lot of people were actually surprised, because so many people had so much expectations from the Russian ground forces. But from what we are seeing, they don't seem to be very well coordinated. They don't seem to be very well organized. And the Ukrainians seem to be more organized and seem to be more effective in taking out their armors and inflicting a whole bunch of casualties on them. That is why you see the situation method the way it is right now.
And it's not just about the organizational coordination. It's also about information flow, because we're hearing now from the U.S. intelligence that Putin might have been misled by his generals as to exactly what's playing out in Ukraine, that he might have been giving information that is not accurate as to exactly what's going on. The UK intelligence also says that Russian soldiers, and I just want to quote them, Russian soldiers are short of weapons and morale, refusing to carry out orders. They are sabotaging their own equipment, and in some cases, they're accidentally shooting down their own aircraft. Do you think that Putin overestimated the ability of his military to secure a rapid victory?
Yes, there is no doubt that he overestimated the capability and capacity of the Russian armed forces and underestimated that of the Ukrainians. And he didn't put into account the support the Ukrainians were supposed to get getting right now from NATO and other Western allies. Sure. The issues that have been reported of the Russian military, particularly that of Putin, when you have a leader who does not like to listen to the advice of those people who are on ground, if you give him any advice that he does not want to, he does not want to hear, the person will be sanctioned. So if you have a leader that is like that, he will be misled. People will not tell him exactly the situation of things for fear of retribution. And that's what seems to be happening in the situation now between Russia and the Ukraine. It's not that those people don't know exactly what the situation was going to be like, but it's possibly because of the kind of person Mr. Putin is, they were not free to give him an honest and unbiased assessment of the situation on the ground. And that is why they are finding themselves, in the situation they are in right now.
Absolutely. Dictators are usually surrounded by sycophants. In the end, that is in itself isolation. But do you think, because just recently we heard from the defense minister in Ukraine, Russia, that the phase 1 of this war has been successful, and that the phase 2 will now focus on liberating the Donbas area. But with this latest intelligence, do you think that the idea of liberating the Donbas area is just to buy time and then create an illusion of a military victory in the east?
That could be that. That could be a possibility, because if you look at all the information that has been coming out of Russia from the inception of this war, it has been neither here nor there. They're telling you one thing and they're doing another. And so it could be a strategy. It could be a strategy that because the first attempt, because from Western intelligence analysis, the first attempt was to decapitate the Ukrainian government and overthrow the current Zelensky government and put in a stooge in Kiev that will dance to the tune of the Russians. But an attempt to invade the entire country, Ukraine is a very massive country, and you're looking at, about 100 and something Russian troops. They will require much more than that number of forces to be able to conquer and occupy a country as big as Ukraine. So maybe the first attempt of trying to take over the entire country has not worked. Because they've discovered their loopholes and their lapses, so they now want to pull back to the Luhansk, Donbas area to be able to reorganize themselves and launch another massive attack that will engulf the entire country. Or maybe this could be their initial plan. Their initial plan is probably to distract other people, while their actual interest is to find a way to connect. Create a land corridor between those two republics that they had recently recognized, to connect them through Mariupol to Crimea through a land corridor. Nobody knows. It's only Putin that actually knows exactly what his intentions are.
So I listened just some hours ago to a Ukrainian soldier. He retired at some point and then joined again because of this war. And he said, I want to quote him, he said, "We have enough people, we have the spirit, but not enough weapons." And how long do you think that these weapons supply will continue? Because Europe and US have been supplying weapons to Ukraine. But if this war continues, how long do you think that the weapon supply will also continue?
On the part of the US, I can tell you, because it's a military that I served, so I can tell you that the US will continue to supply the Ukrainians weapons as long as this war continues. There's always a proxy war between the US and Russia. It's happened everywhere. Even at the time that we were in Afghanistan, there was a proxy war between the US and the Russians, where the Russians were secretly, supporting the Taliban people. So there's always that proxy war between those two nations. So I can tell you that the Americans are going to be with the Ukrainians for as long as it takes. Even change of government is not going to affect it, because the Congress of the United States are always united when anything that has to do with Russia comes up. So I don't see anything that is going to change the U.S. determination and support for the Ukrainians. I think they are with the Ukrainians for the long haul. However, the kind of weapons that the Ukrainians are calling, the U.S. may not be able to provide them with all of those weapons that they're talking about, because they may not be able to confront the Russians, like I said earlier, on a face-to-face combat. The only way they can be successful against the Russians, because the Russians are there's no doubt about it, is a much larger military. And so the Ukrainians can't stand them on a face-to-face combat. But what they can do is to be effective in the way what they are doing right now, a form of guerrilla warfare. You attack, you disperse, and you reorganize, and you identify, and you attack, just like that, inflicting casualties here and there. And you see that is effective, is working for them, and it's been able to allow them to put up the kind of resistance that the Russians never expected they were going to encounter in this war.
Thank you so much, defense and security strategist and former U.S. Army Captain Bish Johnson.